across in Mako Fujimura's writing about the fact that the theology of the church today is truncated without the understanding of God as a creator. We do so value theology, but ironically it doesn't always include God as an artist, even though that, like you said, that's really the beginning of the story. Organizations that gather here in this space that aren't connected to the church at all. And I think that's a lovely idea, that we're here to serve the community. So, you know, when we thought about spaces and pieces of furniture that were inviting, that felt fresh, that felt welcoming and comfortable, not like your living room per se comfortable, but come into the space that almost could feel inspiring. It led us in some of these design choices, and we had an amazing designer to work with. But I think that spaces, you know, they make a difference in people's lives and how they feel about, you know, about where they fit in and where they want to be and where they want to grow in relationships. And I think that sometimes we relegate, as we do with art sometimes, but interior spaces, we sort of, you know, say it's only this valuable compared to other ideals, other values. And I think that, you know, particularly in the church, we have sort of lifted up truth above all. And even though we would say truth and goodness and beauty are the things that we embrace and desire for, you know, the church to embody, what sometimes we really mean is truth leads the way. But I have been challenged recently, I think, to think about how beauty often leads the way. Beauty invites us, and it speaks to us, it works in our life in such a way that then can open us up to this idea of what is good, and then what is true. That we discover truth sometimes through what is beautiful. So, and you know, it's not always that truth leads us to goodness and then to, you know, beautiful things, but that beauty often leads us to what is good and what is true. And you know, I think that being challenged in how we value those things is good. It's good to think about how reordering those things can make a difference in how we approach our lives and our ministries and our interactions with our community and yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. My name is Kristin Gadsden. And I am an art advocate and an art administrator in various ways here in Columbia, Missouri. One of the roles that I have is at Christian Fellowship Church as the Director of Visual Arts and Culture. And it's been a journey to come to this place, but I would say one of the keystones in that journey was an experience I had on the University of Missouri campus with a group of students that I was helping to organize a series of events. One being an art exhibit of oil paintings of portraits of people who had been rescued from human trafficking. And along with those portraits were narratives, like captions that explained what God had done to bring them out of bondage and to a place of freedom and to bring about redemption in their life. And that exhibit was installed, or it was exhibiting in Jesse Hall for about 2 weeks, main administrative building on campus. And when I watched God bring all that together, it was sort of a sweet spot of things that I love, some of the things that I love most. Students and campus ministry and seeing students grow and thrive, but also being able to really advocate for social justice, and also seeing that happen through the medium of the arts. And those were things that I had really never brought together. After decades in the campus ministry, I had never considered bringing kind of this creative side of who I am into into what I do to help foster what hopefully what God is doing in people's lives. And so that idea of to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, I think I'd really just thought, well, sure, but maybe just this part or this part. Had really never thought of myself as a whole, and how do I bring my whole self into doing that, into serving God. And so I think that was an experience where it was an aha, wow, I really can bring this part of me that really loves the arts, that loves being creative, and see what God would do with that offering to help serve His purposes. So I just, I think Madeline Lilla Engel talks about our experience with art as being one in which we encounter art and we're sort of lifted up, we're turned 180 degrees, and we're placed back down, and our perspective on life and on ourself and the world changes entirely. And I think that is a description of what I encountered in just at that time, and then certainly since then, and the opportunities that God has provided since then as well. So the next season was probably one of the biggest changes. Was a change from ministering on a college campus with a campus ministry to a more of a city and community-based ministry, still under the umbrella of Akouo, and under that umbrella of city ministry, working specifically in art and culture. And then under that umbrella, there's a team of artists called the Transform Team, and they're almost entirely artists except for myself, the art advocate administrator that sort of likes to sit in the room with all the other artists and listen to them, because they are amazing people who are acting and painting and writing and sculpting and doing those things as an overflow of who God has made them to be, because they believe that is their offering. That's their spiritual act of worship. That's the way that they serve God, and they are lights in the arts communities where they are. We, at different times over the last few years, have been strewn across the globe. Certainly, most of us are strewn across the United States, and so whether they're in New York or Los Angeles or Dallas or Columbia, Missouri, it's a team that is encouraging one another, developing one another through very intentional growth opportunities. We have an artist in residency program, so we have young artists who join us, and we're able to do some teaching and training with them in their ability to be leaders in the civic realm and as spiritual leaders and in their arts practices. So that's been fun to kind of see that come together, and see these young artists really catch a vision for being artists of faith in the arts and in their communities as well. So that's really been the biggest transition. I've really loved it. I've loved that just I get to be there. That's kind of how I feel. I get to be there on that team. And then here in Columbia, some opportunities have opened with the Office of Cultural Affairs, and I find myself sitting in spaces that I am desperate for the Lord to be at work in my life, because I'm learning and I'm growing, but I'm definitely generally in over my head. And it is definitely it's been a real high learning curve. And I've been learning quite a bit, but I'm always really highly aware of my need for the Lord. So more risk. And then have worked with some nonprofit, different organizations here in Columbia who I'm thrilled to see that organizations of all different kinds are beginning more and more to see how to bring the arts into their mission, and how important that is for them in their mission and in the community of their staff, and just how the arts foster relationships, among other things. So my favorite role, though, that I've stepped into is here at Christian Fellowship, though, and it wasn't really a thing. We just decided that because of the values the church has in the arts, that we needed to be more intentional about developing our connection with the arts community, and so directing that area and beginning to form what that role is even has been thrilling, and the community in the church. I mean, it's just a total blast to work with them. So I've loved that. Yeah. Exhibit is a collection of artists that are being featured in Como Magazine's Art and Culture issue that's coming out in just the next few weeks. We are thrilled to have such a collection as this here, because these really are artists who are involved in the arts culture here in Columbia. Some of them have been for some time, and some of them are beginning that relationship with our community. And so we do love the idea of inviting them here, because we really do believe that art and beauty are a form of hospitality. They invite us to engage with the art, with each other. It helps create spaces for conversations. And I think art has a way of doing that in a way that engages more than just our intellect. It engages our senses, it engages our emotions, and art provides opportunities to have conversations that help us discover more about who we are, more about the world. And of course, our desire here in the church is that we as a church family would be engaging in such a way that we would be experiencing more of who God is, and that art really becomes part of our spiritual formation process. So I think that no matter where somebody's coming from spiritually, there definitely is that experience with art. But I think because God is a creator, that we can experience Him through the creative arts. And I think he longs for us to do that. And I think at one point the church really, historically was a huge influence in the arts, supporter of the arts, and really having probably the greatest say in what was happening in the art world. And through a series of events, of course, the church moved out of that kind of influence. But I would love to see the church as a whole, the big church, really become invested in the arts again, in a way that we're able to help foster and support and see artists of faith and artists from all different perspectives really grow. It's really the arts that, N.T. Wright says that the arts have a way of showing us what is, but also what will be. It points to what creation will be like when God redeems, brings about redemption. And so I think we need artists to be able to understand really more of that process, to be able to understand what we're longing for, what we're hoping for. Artists have a way of leading our imaginations to a place that ultimately we're understanding what we were created for, and what we will experience one day. So this is our current exhibit. It will be up until the end of February, and then it will change to more of an in-house exhibit, but we are hoping that every few months we have an exhibit that invites local artists into this space and helps us develop relationships with our community in that way as well. I came across in Mako Fujimura's writing about the fact that the theology of the church today is truncated without the understanding of God as a creator. We do so value theology, but ironically it doesn't always include God as an artist, even though that, like you said, that's really the beginning of the story. That's really not only the beginning, but the end of the story, in bringing creation back to the place that it started. And I think that if the church understood, because we do so value knowledge and the truth, and that we've missed something. And because we've missed developing a theology of God as a creator, of art, of beauty, even though I feel like there is this movement in the church today, with some of these voices that are really speaking into that today, which I'm just so grateful for, because we have so far to come from a place in history where we were not valuing the arts, where we're stepping out of the arts, where we're abandoning the arts, and we're creating spaces of worship with absolutely no artistic value at all. That could speak to us to some degree because of maybe the sermon we were hearing or the music. Of course, somehow we miss the fact that worship is part of the arts, but visually speaking, we sort of abandoned that for very large chunk of history. So we have a ways to go, but I think that there are these voices today that are really speaking to the church and calling the church to again embrace the act of creativity, the act of bringing about beauty, not just in the form of Christian art, but as people who are artists and Christians, to create art that enables us as a church to experience more of who God is, not just us as a church, but our culture, our culture as a whole. So I think those are the kind of things that I would just love to see continue to flourish. And if I could hope for anything, it would just to be a part of that, to see that gain more and more momentum. That Christians are getting together to read books and discuss books, and it's not just on post-trib, pre-trib, ideas of, I love, that Christians are so prolific in their writing, and often it's extremely heady. And I'm not saying that writing about the arts is not an intellectual endeavor. I think it really is. But I would love to see the flavor of what we're reading, of what we're talking about, of what we're teaching on Sunday, to that began to really envelop more and more of the conversations about art and beauty and the role of those in our spiritual lives, and also, of course, just in our lives in general, how we interact with our community, how we go about serving, how we relate to others, because certainly the arts are a place that foster relationships. They do that so beautifully. And relationships with people that can think very, very differently about life, but somehow you can find common ground in the arts. You can find these spaces and these ideas to meet and discuss. And that is one of the things that we're hoping and aiming to do here in this space, in the new facility of Christian Fellowship. So I think I would love to see Christians pursuing that and pursuing that in a way that they're as serious as they are about other parts of their theology. And it may mean, pursuing that in a setting, a seminary setting. More and more seminaries are developing programs of the intersection of art and faith. Dallas Theological Seminary has done this. Fuller Seminary probably is, I would say, I'm guessing, one of the leading schools that is doing this, and I think they're doing some amazing things. So, for me, I felt like, even though I started at Dallas Seminary, I felt like really the things that were going to enable me to engage the culture in the arts were going to most effectively be found studying the arts at the university. And I think, in that experience, I'm growing to understand more of where our culture is as a whole, not just where the church is, but where our culture is as a whole, and how we view the arts. And so I feel like that's been invaluable for me. It's probably not for everybody to go about learning that way. And not all the things that you can find online, I think, are incredibly effective as well, resource-wise. But I think what I'm getting to is that it's a serious endeavor. Arts isn't like just the icing on the cake. It isn't like the afterthought of, oh yeah, then over here you have something pretty, but it is absolutely intricate to not just our, I think that sometimes we hear about how we need the arts to really thrive. I think that's true. I think we need the arts to survive as well. I think it's inherent in who we are and our need for beauty and things that move us and speak to our very inner parts about who we are, created in God's image.